Imagine it's 1975. You're a quarterback in the NFL. You wake up on Sunday morning and your stomach isn't just churning, it's empty. Because today, you have to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. You step onto the turf at Three Rivers Stadium. The air smells like coal smoke, stale beer, and damp Pennsylvania earth. But mostly it smells like your own impending doom. Across the line of scrimmage, you don't see a football team. You see a dynasty built on savagery. You see Mean Joe Green, a mountain of a man who looks like he wants to eat your offensive line for breakfast. You see Jack Lambert, toothless and snarling, a middle linebacker who played with a level of hatred that should have been illegal. You see Jack Ham, the cerebral assassin. But there's one more man. He stands 6 foot 6 inches. He weighs nearly 250 pounds, but he moves with the fluid grace of a jungle cat. And he's wearing bright, fluorescent gold high-top cleats. While everyone else is looking at Joe Green, this man is already in your personal space. He's the suffocating force of the steel curtain. He is the man who led the greatest defense in history in sacks 6 different times. His name is L.C. Greenwood, and today we're going to talk about one of the greatest injustices in the history of American sports. Because while his teammates are immortalized in Canton, Ohio, L.C. Greenwood, the man who actually did the dirty work, is still waiting outside the gates of the Hall of Fame. This isn't just a career retrospective. This is a crime report. L.C. Henderson Greenwood didn't start as a football player. He started as a provider. Born in 1946 in Canton, Mississippi, L.C. was the eldest of 9 children. In the Jim Crow South, life wasn't about potential, it was about survival. His father Moses was a factory worker, his mother Eliza a homemaker. As the oldest, L.C.'s life was defined by chores and responsibility. The savagery he would later show on the field was forged in those early years. He didn't even play sports until his junior year of high school. Why? Because the chores had to come first. He was a stellar student, a man with a mind as sharp as his footwork. In fact, football almost never happened. L.C. was offered a scholarship to Clark College in Atlanta to study pharmacy. He was going to be a doctor. He was going to leave the mud of Mississippi behind for a white coat and a stable life. Arkansas A&M, a small HBCU, offered a full athletic scholarship. L.C. looked at his 8 younger siblings, saw his father's calloused hands, made a business decision. He chose the pads over the prescriptions. At Arkansas A&M, he was a revelation. He was a 6 foot 6 inch giant who moved like a guard. By his freshman year, an injury forced him into the starting lineup. He never gave the spot back. He became an Ebony All-American, a force of nature in the SWAC. But the NFL scouts weren't exactly lining up to visit Pine Bluff. When the 1969 NFL Draft rolled around, the Steelers were a joke, a lovable loser franchise that hadn't won anything in 40 years. They had just hired a young, stoic coach named Chuck Noll. Noll didn't care about pedigree, he cared about unleashed potential. The Steelers waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, in the 10th round, pick number 238, and they took a flyer on the kid from Mississippi. Greenwood wasn't supposed to make the roster. He was a nobody from a nowhere school. But Noll saw something the rest of the league missed. He saw a frame that could hold more muscle and a motor that refused to shut off. Greenwood didn't just make the team, he became the heartbeat of a transformation. By 1971, he was a starter. By 1972, the steel curtain wasn't just a nickname, it was a reality. And Greenwood was the hinge that let the door swing shut on every offense in the league. Let's look at the tape. L.C. Greenwood was a freak of nature. He was 6 foot 6 inches and played around 245 pounds. In the 1970s, defensive ends were supposed to be pluggers, the big, heavy guys who just leaned on the offensive tackle. Greenwood was different. He was a mythological creature on the edge. He used his incredible wingspan to bat down passes before swatting was even a tracked stat. In Super Bowl IX alone, he swatted 3 of Fran Tarkenton's passes out of the air. He was a skyscraper in the middle of a street fight. But his true weapon was his speed. He had the closing burst of a linebacker. If a quarterback tried to scramble away from Mean Joe Green, they ran straight into the long-reaching arms of number 68. He didn't just tackle you, he suffocated you. He wrapped you up in those massive limbs and pulled you into the dirt. He was the prototype for the modern edge rusher. Decades before J.J. Watt or Myles Garrett, there was L.C. Greenwood, a man who played with the violence of the 70s and the athleticism of the 2020s. But the craziest part about LC isn't just the physical gifts. It's what he did to Roger Staubach when the world was watching the biggest game of his life. If you want to know who LC Greenwood was, you only need to watch one game, Super Bowl X. It was January 18, 1976. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. America's team versus the Steel Curtain. Roger Staubach, Captain Comeback, was under center for Dallas. He was the golden boy. He was supposed to be the one who could solve the Pittsburgh puzzle. Instead, he met a nightmare in gold shoes. L.C. Greenwood started wearing those gold high tops because he had a persistent ankle injury and needed the extra support. He painted them gold so his family back in Mississippi could spot him on the grainy TV broadcasts. In Super Bowl X, those gold shoes were all Staubach saw. Unofficially, because the NFL didn't track sacks as an official stat until 1982, and L.C. Greenwood had 4 sacks on Roger Staubach in that game. 4! In the biggest game on the planet, Greenwood didn't just play well, he dominated. He was unblockable. He treated the Dallas offensive line like they were high schoolers. He lived in the backfield. Every time Staubach looked up, a 6'6" shadow was blotting out the sun. Throughout his playoff career, Greenwood was a different animal. He finished with 12.5 unofficial postseason sacks. To put that into perspective, that's more than almost any Hall of Famer you can name. When the lights were brightest, the man in the gold shoes was the most dangerous man on the planet. Let's talk about the official record books for a second. The NFL is guilty of a massive clerical error. They didn't start counting sacks until 1982. That was the year after Greenwood retired, so his official sack total is 0. But thanks to film study and the diligent work of researchers at Pro Football Reference and the Steelers' own archives, we know the truth. L.C. Greenwood finished his career with 78 sacks. He led the Pittsburgh Steelers in sacks during 6 different seasons: 1971, 1973, 1974, 1975, 1978, and 1979. This is a staggering feat considering he played on a defensive line that featured the legendary Mean Joe Green. Read that again. On a defense with multiple Hall of Famers, Greenwood was the most productive pass rusher for nearly a decade. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time first-team All-Pro, a member of the NFL's 1970s All-Decade team. If you look at the players on that All-Decade team, almost all of them are in Canton, except for LC. He was the left end of the most dominant front four in football history. Along with Joe Green, Dwight White, and Ernie Holmes, they formed a wall of savagery that has never been duplicated. Between 1972 and 1979, the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls. They didn't do that because of their offense. They did it because L.C. Greenwood and his brothers made life a living hell for every quarterback they faced. So, here's the question that haunts Pittsburgh fans and football historians alike. Why is L.C. Greenwood not in the Hall of Fame? He's been a finalist 6 times. The argument against him is usually Steeler fatigue. Critics say you can't put the whole 1970s Steelers defense in the Hall. But why not? If they were the greatest, shouldn't they all be there? They put Joe Green in, they put Jack Ham in, they put Jack Lambert in, they put Mel Blount in. But Mean Joe Green himself will tell you, I would not have had nearly the success without LC. We were partners. By keeping Greenwood out, the Hall of Fame is essentially saying that his production was just a byproduct of playing next to Joe Green. But the tape says the opposite. Greenwood was often the one being doubled. Greenwood was the one chasing down the plays from the backside. It's a crime that a man with 78 career sacks, 4 Super Bowl rings, and an all-decade selection is forced to wait in the shadows. L.C. Greenwood passed away in 2013. He never got to wear the gold jacket. He never got to stand on that stage and thank the fans in the gold shoes one last time. Every year that passes without his induction is a stain on the integrity of the Hall. You cannot tell the story of the NFL without the Steel Curtain, and you cannot tell the story of the Steel Curtain without L.C. Greenwood. L.C. Greenwood didn't need a bronze bust to know who he was. He was the man who turned the Steel Curtain from a catchy phrase into a terrifying reality. He was the 10th round nobody who became a 4-time world champion. He was the man who wore gold shoes not for vanity, but so his mother could see him from the back row of history. In the end, legends aren't defined by the clothes they wear or the buildings they are housed in. They are defined by the fear they struck into the hearts of their enemies. And for 12 seasons, no one struck more fear into the NFL than the long-legged assassin from Arkansas A&M. L.C. Greenwood was the soul of the Steel Curtain. It's time the world remembered his name.